hold on tight. 'Cause you know tomorrow may not bring that same thing that you said last night. Woo! Every time I find a little peace of mind, I hold on tight. 'Cause tomorrow may not bring the very same thing. No, no, no. Said none of the right there. You that care all. Just for me, I'm so glad that you that care all. Just for me, I'm so glad that you that care all. For a sinner like me.
Well, hello, Marvette. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you, and yourself.
Simply fantastic, and thank you for asking. I know that you came by today to explain something that a lot of people probably go through but never speak about as much. And
Mhm.
I'm glad that you came in and you're going to tell us a story about a parent and how you and the parent went through dementia. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, when you start off, can you kind of just maybe give us a little background about you and then we'll lead into the story?
Well, I'm born and raised in Chicago. Uh, Moved here to Denver in 1981. I was married at the time, mother of two children. I have a son and a daughter. Son David, who is 46 as of yesterday. He had his
Okay,
birthday.
young lady.
And, and I have a daughter who is 44.
Okay, Marvette. So you're going to tell us about your father.
Yes.
Would you like to just start from like the beginning and how it led up into this tragedy?
Well, as I said, I grew up, as a young girl, and I had a father that was the most amazing individual father, uh, just the man himself, not just being my dad, but just the things I saw him do for others. He was the type of person, he lost his parents when he was young. And there was siblings for them. I believe it was 13 kids. And he lost his father and his mother when he was young. So siblings were raising siblings, but of course they had a host of other relatives, uncles, and aunts. They had an uncle, and I remember him as a kid, Uncle Otis. This man was amazing. As a kid, all I could see was two Black men that represented what it meant to move from the South during that migration when people that lived in the South, Mississippi, in those places of that nature, and they migrated to Chicago. So he was part of that era of leaving the South and moving to Chicago, starting a young family. I do have two older siblings, actually three, that were raised in the South. I was born in the city of Chicago,
Okay.
but I have Southern roots. My dad was the type of person where he never wanted you to forget where you came from. and never take anything for granted. He actually taught us what it meant to be able to take care of yourself. Not only as a young woman, I mean, the things he implanted in me to pay attention to as a young girl growing up, being able to have, if you were married, to understand what that purpose was. What a man that is head of household and faith driven. He was such a man of God that the fear of God was in all of us as kids. Dad was one of those that always wanted to shield us from any traumas, traumatic, anything that would affect us from not being successful human beings in the world, to be able to not only have an education, have a job, be able to take care of ourselves, and just know what the meaning of God is.
Is it safe to say, sounds like your daddy's little girl or something?
I
I
am.
mean, I mean, if
I
there was
am.
ever a pyramid, that was a big one there.
It was.
I
It really
mean, he's
was.
the rock, but I like the part about he's a man of faith, and
He
that
was.
that was driving you. And
Yep.
so, what was you all's relationship growing up?
Wow. You talking about a daddy's girl, spoiled. Uh, this was a man that would leave his job at noon and leave from the other side of where he worked, which probably would take maybe 45 minutes to get to where I was for school. And he brought me lunch every day from White Castles.
Oh my land, from White Castle for his little girl.
Yes, I mean, everybody knew it. As long as I've grown up, everyone has known who my father was. He made that well known. Anytime you saw him, and it was anything that was a function, because he was well known in the neighborhood doing things, people at his company, he was always well dressed, always dressed to the nine, never not ever looking sharp.
Your father come back to Denver with you?
Uh, he was very emotional when we made that transition, because we are a close knit family. On the Sundays when you get together and have the old fashioned soul
Yeah,
food,
yeah.
you know, after service, church, everybody gets together and we meet and we will have dinner. So he was very, very geared on family. Family was most important to him. I know of our family is every 2 years we do a family reunion. And he was very, very hands-on, very knowledge as far as history of the Lynches. I do know each, as the family reunions would grow, they went back and did research on our family as far as 1888 or 1868, one of those. And the legacy has started from there all the way up. I can't say he was at every last one of those reunions for up until the time of his death. Even when he was sick, he was still trying to go, because that was how devoted he was to the family. He always wanted everyone in the family to know your history, know who you are, know where you come from. At those reunions, everyone would gravitate to him because he had so much history of who cousin was who, whose mama was who, whose daddy was who. All I mean, from just generational. That was just who he is.
A time when your dad became ill,
Yes,
and that's the part that I feel is probably a little more difficult on this interview. But
it
we
is.
are here now, and
Yeah.
can you tell us like how it started, when you noticed, what you had to go through, if there was any attitudes or anything like that?
It was quite a bit. The one thing I learned from his death and from us as a people of culture, our parents, a lot, and even relatives, experience what you call dementia. My brother and I experienced with our father. I started noticing it when making calls to my dad. Him and I would communicate quite often. And I would notice when we would be in conversation, things would start being repetitive or he would forget. The time that really broke my heart was I was trying to move from Georgia, and I was going to go move back to Chicago just to be with them, because when you start seeing your parent aging and you get concerned, and knowing they live in the city of Chicago, I just wanted to be available to do those things that, we feel we need to do, take care of them, doctor's appointments, just make sure
Mm-hmm.
all the needs that they need as they aged. And this one particular time when I was talking to my dad, he went totally left. I mean, that was the first time, and I hate to admit it because he was very shameful when we did discuss it. He cussed me out. I mean, literally, it just broke my heart because I never experienced that from him. So,
Excuse me, because
yeah,
that, you're
yeah,
saying you were talking with him and then he would forget some things and repeating things. So could we say that the repeating and the forgetfulness are kind of like intertwined?
yes, it is.
And then it came a time, did he know he was talking to you, or did he
I don't
perceive
think he
something
did. I,
differently? He
yeah,
just
I
took
did.
off.
I noticed it right away because of the relationship I know him and I had. We had that relationship knowing when I lived here. I always spent my birthday with my parents. So I always went back to Chicago because my parents don't really like to fly. So, and the drive all the way from Chicago out here was definitely, he did that twice and he told me he would never do it again. So if I need to see him, I need to get on the plane and come and see him.
Okay.
So when that occurred, it really struck me because knowing the relationship that we had, how we would talk and communicate, I knew that wasn't him. I knew he would never do anything like that to me, knowing our relationship. My brother, and I said, I was just talking to dad and I was kind of sniffling. He said, "What's wrong?" And I explained to him, I said, "Dad just really cursed me out." And he said, "What?"
Mm.
And he said, "Well, I've kind of noticed some things too. Mind you, this whole time, my mom, not my biological mom, my stepmom, but they've been married over 50 years. And he made her promise not to tell us that anything was going on with him. Nothing. Don't discuss it. Don't talk about it. Everything's okay. Mind you, my mom is an ordained minister. So to have someone to keep a secret like that, it was hard for her to know he was sick. But then again, her being honoring the father in her marriage, she would not break, the bond that they had, and his wishes of not discussing to his kids that he was sick.
Well, tell me then. So when you all had these suspicions and you talked to her, obviously she didn't tell you. So how did you catch up with the seriousness of your father?
My father was diagnosed what they call dementia, it's called sundown, or where most of his episodes occurred at night. And things,
Sundown.
yeah, and things were happening where my dad was like 6'2". He's
Okay.
a big, he's a big guy.
Yeah.
Pretty much short like me. Of course, you've seen me, little, small, petite, but she was the type of woman. They had such a beautiful marriage, and they were like peanut butter and jelly.
Okay now.
Sugar in the Kool-Aid.
Come on now.
They were that connected. So I understood where her position was, and also not to feel like she betraying him
Right.
on discussing what needed to be. But anyway, he was having episodes, he was leaving. Fire department was coming quite often, the police was coming.
The police, fire department was coming. And how were you alerted that they were coming? And what were they coming for?
We weren't alerted because my mom, these are the things we found out eventually
Okay.
after we started noticing something was off. Things, communication, the conversations, the situation that took place with me. We all knew something's wrong for him to do what he did and say it to me. We did what we call, it led up to doing what you call a divine intervention. We were home for my birthday, and of course, you got the picture that she sent you. That was the last time that we really spent together as a family, with him partially in his right mind and not. We noticed it more during that time being home for my birthday because episodes that were taking place then. My brother, once him and I got together on the day of the birthday party, there's a picture showing that I had a card up, and I was explaining to my brother, we got to do something. And he was like, I know, but we have to respect the fact that he's married, because siblings or children, you don't want to come in between your relationship of your parents. You have to respect, because if he's ill, you have to respect her being the wife.
When you say respect the wife, I mean, if she's getting all these calls from the fire department, police, and everything, she's going through a whole lot that you all aren't even aware of. Is this
Didn't
what?
even
No
didn't
clue.
even know. No clue. None.
Okay, come on.
After we went home for the party, and it was like a few months after we were home to witness what we were seeing, things got a little worse. 2018, right before the winter was hitting, he was leaving. And in Chicago, the temperature was dropping below zero. And they had what called the alert buttons
Right.
on. So every time he would have an episode and things would be happening, he was pressing the button. So of course, when you do that, that alerts the police.
Okay.
That alerts the fire department.
Okay.
They were coming out there quite often. That's going to do a red flag, which will do a welfare check by the state. Okay, what's going on? Why are these people being elderly in here by themselves? Where's the family? Is anyone looking after them? Things that we were starting to notice that was happening, just physical things within the house. My mom was tired. She was feeding him, she was taking care of him. She was struggling through all those episodes that he was going through, trying to keep him, trying to take care of herself. Yeah, you're right. It was a lot.
Oh my land. Oh my land.
Yeah,
That sounds like a whole lot.
it was. It
So
was.
so the people kept getting calls, and then somebody said, look, like you said, a wellness check or something.
Yeah,
So is that kind of when the ball got to rolling, or what happened?
yeah. My brother and I decided we needed to do a divine intervention and figure out something's going on. And I told my brother, I said, we need to get to the bottom of what's happening, because if the state gets involved, they start doing things and wanting to put people or get involved. And once state gets involved with care giving, it can become a problem. So this was about January. I remember I jumped on the plane. We went home. We didn't tell my father we were coming. We didn't tell my mother we were coming. We just showed up just to see what was going on without preparation. Because if you say, oh, well, we'll be there on Saturday, everything was okay. But when we decided to do that intervention and we went home,
Good time.
I remember my brother and I, we walked in the room and my dad was in the chair and he literally tried to jump up and run out the room and run to the room for us to not see us. And he broke down and started crying and saying, I didn't want you all to see me like this. Please don't see me like this. And that was the time we really had to let him know that he was sick and that it wasn't anything he did. It was an illness that had taken over his body and his thought process.
He knew something wasn't right. He knew that, but he couldn't process it, and he couldn't work it out. And all of this is going on, and like you said, you didn't let your mom, you didn't let nobody know you were coming. So when you walked up on her, can you just kind of let me know what was her reaction? And
It was like a relief. You know what I mean? It was like, I know she felt good about it because it wasn't anything that she said to make things start happening.
Okay.
She just said, I know my kids. I know y'all are smart. And I'm so thankful you all did. And she's a prayer warrior. And
Come on now.
her prayers were
Come on now.
that started making it where it was getting too much for her. It was a lot. Even we found more investigating we did when he was going to his primary care. my mom was in the room and they had spoke to her and let her know that that was happening, that he had kept it from her, but the doctors made a decision that they wasn't going to allow the secret to continue because he was getting worse. They wanted to give him medication to kind of treat it, but one thing about dementia, I don't know enough yet. I was doing research on it to see, and a lot of our culture, we have a lot of our mature people. We call them elders, elderly. I just say the matured in age. We need to expose and study and find out because our parents get so feeling they don't shame. They feel ashamed. Like, why is this happening to me? This shouldn't be happening to me. I let this happen to me. I should, it's all of those different things that they process in their mind. And there's really nothing they can do about it because it's just something that happens. It's a disease that happens. Our culture, we call it dementia. White call it Alzheimer's. Two different things because Alzheimer's is a different type of disease than it is with dementia. So you just have to continue to keep watch, pay attention, stay on top of their lifestyle, and just really monitor when you see things change in your parents. Like I said, when my dad said what he said that time to me, and we had an opportunity to be in the living room, and we were really having a great conversation with my dad right after he saw us. And we sat in the living room to explain to him, Dad, you're sick. This is a disease that's taking over your body and your mind. We just have to figure out the best way to get you help because the help that the doctors were sending in, they were sending people over for meals and cleaning and just doing regular routine. Him being the booger he can be, he got rid of him. He didn't want him there. Get out of my house. Why you in here cleaning? You ain't cleaning, you being nosy, just
Right.
that was who he is. I don't need you cleaning my house. My wife can clean my house. Get out of here. But it was things that they were putting in place for him and he was getting rid of. He was becoming more isolated and he wasn't that kind of person of isolation. He was very friendly. He was well loved. He would do anything in the world for you. When they had a surprise birthday for him, he had never had a party in his life, ever.
What?
Not one birthday party, ever. And my mom gave him a birthday party, surprise. And my dad don't like surprises. My dad
Okay.
is nosy. He is nosy. I used to tell him all the time, you so nosy. Can't nobody do nothing with you. And my mom, when she was doing all the planning for this, she was saying, well, I got to be careful because I said, you ain't got to say it. Somebody is nosy. And I kept telling her, I don't know how you going to pull it off. She pulled it off. She had over 200 something people
Wow.
showed up. My dad knew just about everybody in his company that he worked for. He worked at an air plant. They did air filters and fans for airplanes. And he was a supervisor, whatever. Plus, he was also a union steward. He believed in the union. He believed in the rights of people. He fought for a lot of things. He marched for a lot of things. He just was one of those people that believed justice for Black people and color and working, being from where he was to where he came. They showed up at that party there must have been, I think, if I can remember correctly, and don't quote me, I think it was at least 10 people that had worked from him. And the majority of them were women. And they came up because it was a time for you to come up and speak on it. And they told him how much they appreciated him being their boss, saving their jobs, keeping them from being fired, and help them raise their kids.
Amen.
Yes, spoken to their children. Every last one of these people got up and had a different story to tell and thanked him for what he had done for them being their boss. He had never heard that. That day, he was just so full because he had never heard people take the time out to tell them how important he was to them and what he had done for them within their life.
Was this surprise party during his sickness?
No, prior
Oh,
to,
okay.
prior
Okay.
to.
So he
That's
was
how
able
you knew this was right after the party when everything just kind of shifted.
out there and you was telling your father about how this was a sickness. Did he receive that or did he
He
reject
did.
it?
He
And
did.
what kind of help was what's available or what route did you take for your dad?
My brother had to become power of attorney to be able to communicate because of HIPAA laws, and being able to speak with doctors and all the things that we didn't know about. So the first thing he did is started with his doctor. And they sat down and pretty much went through all the records of everything of what was taking place, the progressiveness to where we were. My brother asked, so how do we approach this? What do we need to do to get him help? What is this? What are we facing? And we did for a short time before his death, he was in a nursing home because he was beginning to be a little bit more than what my mom could take care. It had been long before that, but God bless her soul, being the
Amen.
who she was and the godly woman she was. She did what she had to do. For COVID, when I was hearing he was sick, I decided to go home to go see him. March 9th, 2020, that next day, I was supposed to have been going out on a flight to go home to see them. And CDC shut down everything because that was when COVID hit. And my brother called me. He said, "You're not leaving. You won't be able to get in and see him because everything has been shut down in the government. So you're not going nowhere." And it broke my heart because he was there and my mom was also there in the nursing home with him. So they were there together. And his illness got progressively worse. And his 3-year anniversary of his death is Memorial Day of this year. He died on Memorial Day by himself. So I never got to have that finality. None
Wait,
of us.
wait.
Yeah, he died.
So you're saying when he was in the nursing home, everything shut down, so nobody could really go see him. Oh my God. Did they let his wife in? Oh my God.
She was across the hall from him in another room because she had fell and hurt herself, and she was there for rehab. And he was across the hall. She didn't even know he had passed. because they wouldn't let her go see him.
That's tragic. That has to be hard. I mean, I might have to switch cameras here because that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's really heartbreaking to be so close to someone and something you can't even be there. You can't even get. I mean, it wasn't being there. You couldn't even. There was no way for you to even get there. And if you got there, they wouldn't let you in. This terrible disease. Uh, there is no cure. Am I correct?
At this time, I don't believe so. I do know there is a medication that can be prescribed to people. How much of it or what it does, I can't speak on. But I do know my dad would always say he didn't like taking that medicine. Dad was the type of person, he was always aware of what was going on. That's why I said when the dementia was happening, knowing him as the man that we all knew him, that took a toll on him. Him being that man that's very prideful, I'm take care of my family. He did. He was just that person. And then to see he was the type of man that had a disease to take over him like that and not understand what it was being away. I feel if we were able to interact with him a little bit more than what he did, we would have been able to pinpoint it and diagnose it maybe a little earlier than what it was. The dementia he was experiencing was he was remembering things from his childhood, just a lot of those things that he experienced. I do remember him was really, he thought, concerned, because I remember we were in the car once. We always loved to take trips because he loved to drive. He don't fly. But the only person he would let drive his car was me. So if I
Okay.
was driving, he was on the other side and we would talk. That was my way of talking to him to find out what was going on and just spend time with him as a daughter because I knew the relationship we had. We would get in the car and just go have hamburgers together, sit in the
Okay.
car and just eat hamburgers and talk. Uh, Growing up as being in high school, being in a majorette, he would come to the football field and it was down the street from where we would have our football games. He would stand all the way at the end of the football field. There'd be one man standing out there looking on the fence, was my father. And everybody in school knew it was my dad. They would say, "Yo, daddy down there at the end of the field."
Boy, yo, dad. Letting everybody know that's my baby.
And that's what he would say. That was his words. It's exactly what you said.
I feel that if you had something that you could give someone or tell someone that might be going through something like that with a loved one of theirs, could you give us any advice of what you would say we should do?
Pray about it first. Ask God what the approach should be.
Yeah.
Do everything through God. God got us through all of that.
Amen.
Everything we needed, us being a praying family that we were. My father's belief at home was, as for me and my house,
Okay, now.
we will serve the Lord.
Some of the behaviors, but I wasn't up on it like you were. And it wasn't something horrible like that, a pandemic that kept people from even being with loved ones. So many people left this earth, 200 people at a birthday party you never had. And then when you're on your deathbed, your own wife can't see you. And that's pretty sad. But I thank you, Marvette, for sharing that story. I thank you for answering the call.
Thank you for having me, and all the best to you and your endeavors. And may God keep you blessed, keep you healthy, and good luck to everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Well, another episode of Where Were You? And we would like to thank our guests for this evening. Also want to thank New Me. New Me helps sponsor Where Were You? So go on and check it out. New Me /Arkway. Also, go on and hit that like. Go on and hit subscribe. Go on and hit that share. Go on and leave a comment. And if you find anyone that has a story, let me know. And hey, you bless someone today.